Well, hello. Welcome to our Careers webinar. I'm Laura Torres from Blue Star Careers, and our goal for these webinars is to empower you and empower your career trajectory to make sure that we are sharing ideal resources to make you a more successful applicant. Now, today, we have a very special guest, Michelle Horst, a Human Resource and Outreach Specialist from the Division of Staffing, Recruitment, and Outreach Branch at the Department of Labor. So that's a really, really powerful title. So I ask that you please join us, tag your favorite milspouse friend or your job seeker, and be sure that you watch and post your comments, your questions, because we're going to get to towards every single one of them towards the end. If not, we'll come back and reply to your comments. But most importantly, please support and pay it forward and tell us where you're watching. We want to be able to send you a shout out. So without further ado, let's get started. Thank you for watching. Well, once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, for supporting our Blue Star Careers webinars, and for posting your questions and your shout outs. Remember, we would like to be able to share with you and send you some virtual love and appreciation. So wherever you are, we are streaming on our Facebook page, our LinkedIn community page, as well as on YouTube and all across multiple Blue Star Families chapters. So wherever you are, please tell us where you're watching. We'd love to be able to highlight your presence and tell our special guest, Michelle, that you are all looking forward to listening to this incredible opportunity, best practices, and how to land yourself in federal employment. What is it that we need to know? So, Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Spouse Live. We so appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Laura. And hello and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where you are tuning in from. A big thank you to Blue Star Families. What an amazing organization, and for connecting me with this wonderful audience. My name is Michelle Horst, and I am a Human Resource Specialist with the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Administration and Management within the Office of Human Resources, Division of Staffing, Recruitment, and Outreach Branch. That is a mouthful. But I'm joining to you today from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm super excited to share with you some insider tips. And I hope to help you out in your federal application journey. I know it can be a little overwhelming, especially at that first attempt. So thank you again for tuning into the session. I greatly honor all of you in the military spouse community. Your resilience is super inspiring while you support your family. And I also honor your spouse and thank them for their service. I myself am a military veteran. I served 8 years in the Army, to include the National Guard, Active Guard Reserves, and I deployed overseas in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 07 and 08. My first 4 years or so I spent as a heavy vehicle operator. So my MOS was an 88 mic, driving the M915s, 14-ton tractor, 40-foot trailers. I knew when my ETS was going to be up, I wasn't at all interested in driving semi-trucks in the streets of Chicago when I grew up. So I switched my MOS to 42 Alpha, which is Human Resources. After a lot of edits to my resume, transitioning, the military skills so that it can be at a civilian level of understanding, I then jump-started my federal career as a part-time administrative assistant with the Environmental Protection Agency. So this was back then it was a student temporary employment position, GS4, very entry level. It's now known as Pathways. You can see a lot of different entry levels through recent graduates, Pathways programs. And then my full-time HR career with the federal government was with the Transportation Security Administration out of O'Hare Airport here in Chicago. And then I transferred to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, closer to my hometown. And then now I've been with the Department of Labor for the last 2 years or so. So totaling about 15 years of government service in total, with military buyback, which all helps add into like service computation and federal retirement benefits. As Laura said, we're going to give you an overview of how the federal application process works and what are some common pitfalls so you can be better informed when you are searching for and applying to those federal jobs. I am interested to learn more about your knowledge of the federal hiring process and USAjobs.gov website specifically. So if you could just take a moment, put in the chat, enter a number 1 if you've never visited the site, USAjobs.gov. Enter a number 2 if you have a USA Jobs account, but you've never actually applied to a position yet. And then a number 3 if you have applied for a federal position through USAjobs.gov, or maybe even you're a federal employee currently.
Wonderful. So let's hope that everyone is currently added. I know we have quite a few comments being added. People are telling us where they're watching, Michelle. And there are currently, of course, we have, our community members on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook and our YouTube. And I see Karen has responded with a number 1. Tiffany has a number 3. Raquel at 2. Dora at 2. Felicia 3, and more 3s. So yeah. So and we'll probably continue as we continue to remind everyone what those numbers stand for. But what does that tell you as far as the federal employment process and perhaps where we need to work a little bit harder on our end as applicants to really secure a position with the Department of Labor or any federal employment agency?
Yeah, I think this presentation will be valuable whatever step you are in the process. If you're brand new to USAjobs.gov, or if you are even a current federal employee, maybe there's some insider tips that you didn't necessarily know when it comes to the resume, which we'll touch on here in a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you. So you want to get started? Let's bring on our...
Please go ahead. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, this was just my welcome and introduction. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. And so before we actually dive into the federal application process, I do want to touch briefly on the federal government's military spouse hiring authority. What does that look like to be eligible, and how do you prove your eligibility? So if you're tuning in today and none of these apply to you that we're going to discuss directly, just know that this presentation, it's still super worthwhile. It's basic federal application process, but I did want to highlight what does it mean for the military spouse hiring authority eligibility. So when you are applying to jobs in the federal government as a military spouse eligible, in order to be eligible, you must either be a spouse of an active duty service member, and that means an individual that's serving in the armed forces under orders, and specifying that the individual is called to ordered to active duty for more than 180 consecutive days. That's other for than training. You are a spouse of a retired or separated member of the armed forces with a service-connected disability rating of 100%, or a widower whose spouse died while serving on active duty in the armed forces, and you have not remarried, and that death may have been a result of an enemy attack, accident, disease, or natural causes. Next slide. Okay, so to show proof of eligibility, if it's based on marriage, we would just require within your application package on USA Jobs a copy of your spouse's active military orders, DD-214, and then documentation verifying your marriage. If it's based on 100% disability, proof the service member was retired, released, or discharged from active duty, DD-214, and then also the documentation of the service member's 100% disability, so VA letter and proof of marriage. And then if it's based on death of the service member, again, documentation of the service member's death while in active duty, and also proof of marriage. There's some other conditions when you apply under the military spouse hiring authority. You must apply to the job opportunity announcement, which we're going to go over how to do that. and you must still meet the basic qualification requirements for the position, and you are subject to like the same suitability requirements as any other applicants. One good thing is there's no geographic restrictions when applying, and I think that changed over the last few years. All right, so next slide, Laura. Okay, so for today's presentation, what we are going to cover is an introduction to usajobs.gov, how to create and manage your account, how to search for jobs and review your search results with specific announcements, how to apply to those jobs, next steps, and some additional resources. Next slide. You can jumpstart your federal application journey by going to usajobs.gov. So if you haven't heard of it before, this is the official federal government employment website or portal where you can find and apply to jobs as well as get answers to your questions about federal employment. There's a ton of great resources on the website. So after you're done watching today and you have some time, navigate through the website. In general, they have a lot of tips and how-to guides. Next slide. Once you're on the site, I encourage you to create an account. So you can search for jobs without an account, but to maximize your search results and before you can actually apply for a position, it is required to have an account. So to do this, you'll be directed to create what's called a login.gov account with a valid email address. You enter in your email, hit submit, check your email for a confirmation email with the link, and then you'll be directed back to the usajobs.gov site to continue your setup. Next slide. So you've created your account login. The next step is to complete your profile, which is also required before you can apply to a position. With your completed profile, you'll be able to save your favorite jobs and searches, receive email updates, create, edit, and make your resume searchable, upload required documents, and manage and track your application all within that one place. Next slide. Okay, in this section of profile setup, you're simply entering in your basic contact information. So full name, address, email, citizenship, and selective service information if that applies, and federal service and military service if that also applies to you. Next slide. Some additional sections of the profile setup to enhance it includes work experience, education, demographics, languages, any professional organizations that you may belong to, and references if you wish to list. Some of these sections are optional, but completing them will help USA Jobs improve your search results. So definitely worthwhile to spend a little bit of time. This doesn't serve as a substitute for your resume by entering this information though, just know that. All right, next slide. I would say this is the most important step in completing your profile. This is the document section. So when it comes to uploading your resume, you can upload up to 5 different resumes and 10 additional documents to include transcripts, veterans documents, or any other documents that the job announcement states that is required. This is also where you can make your resume and profile searchable. So making it searchable adds it to the USA Job resume bank. HR specialists, recruiters, sometimes hiring managers from federal agencies will use that resume bank to source potential applicants. Next slide. All right, so now you have your profile completed. You can begin actually searching for jobs and applying to them. So USA Jobs, it gives you the option to perform a very basic job search. You can enter in the keywords and or the location. Or for a more advanced search, you would click that blue search button over to the right, which will open up a brand new window to filter and refine your search. Next slide. So then once you click on that blue advanced search button, it allows you to filter by a variety of different things. So pay, work schedule, the department, specific department or agency. And those are just to name a few, but this will help you narrow your search to the jobs that will best meet your criteria, along with specific hiring paths that meet your eligibility. Next slide. So when I mention hiring paths, this is a general list of hiring paths that the federal government uses to help hire individuals that represent our diverse society. Some specific hiring paths to pay attention to for this audience could be military spouse, those that are open to the public, students and recent graduates, and even veterans, as compared to those that are only open to federal employees. So many times the job announcement may be listed or advertised in multiple ways, one being open to the public simultaneously, along with one open to internal federal employees only. So you want to make sure that you're applying to the correct job announcement. And some of those internal announcements also include military spouses. So again, you just want to read through, make sure that you're applying to the correct position that you're eligible for. Next slide. Okay, so back to the search feature. I went ahead for the purpose of this example, filtered positions that were open to military spouses with the Department of Labor. And then you'll see a list of search results or job opportunity announcements. And it will provide like a brief snapshot of position title, the agency, the location, the open period, so start and end date, the salary and the grade, and the type of appointment. Once you've refined your search, you can save your search and receive these push notifications and emails when positions are open in the future that you're interested in. Highly recommend to do that unless you're able to log into USA Jobs daily and redo your search. Just save that search so you can get push notifications, and you can save multiple searches. If you do find a job that you're interested in applying, you simply click on the title and you'll be able to review the full job opportunity announcement. Again, to ensure that you're eligible, you meet the basic qualifications, specialized experience, and/or education requirements. Next slide. Okay, so once you click on the job title, it'll open up the full job announcement. And again, to the right, you'll see that overview of the announcement details at a quick glance if you just want to, skim through there before actually applying. But please read the entire job announcement if you do wish to move on and apply. If you wish to apply, you click the blue apply button to begin the federal application process, which is essentially 4 steps. We breeze through how to create and manage your account, how to search and save these jobs. So the next section that I'm going to cover is going to be how to actually apply successfully. It's a lot of information, but super important. So please bear with me and keep in mind, everything that I am speaking about can be found on usajobs.gov. Again, they have a lot of great resources and how-to guides as well. Next slide. Okay, so applying for federal jobs. Step 1. So first step, read the entire announcement carefully. It contains all the information that was just included in that snapshot and a bunch of critical information for what's required. And this is going to vary from one agency to the next and even from one position to the next, depending on the position. Make sure that you're eligible to apply by reviewing the title, series grade, duty location, and the hiring pass or the who may apply section is clarified by the agency. The announcement will list the closing. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment. So this is where the magic actually happens, right? For federal employment is being able to watch or review carefully the position summary and the duties to make sure that you are a qualified applicant and the time that you invest in the application process is really worth the application and for you to be actually really set yourself for success.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, the time that you invest is going to lead you to that successful application. It is a time-consuming process. It's not just a couple of clicks and upload a resume. Because of the variety of job announcements, the ways that they're advertised, and the eligibility requirements are going to vary greatly. So definitely read through that entire announcement. Yeah, thank you, Laura, for highlighting that. So when you're viewing the announcement, oh, yep, there we go. So when it comes to the closing date, back to step 1. One more slide up. There we go. Okay, so closing date. The reason why I want to highlight why the closing date is so important. So when you see that end date, applications close at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that means all of your application package documents submitted prior to 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If anything submitted after that time frame, your application will not be accepted. And also note that some vacancies have a cap on applications received. For example, it may read a closing date, but then it will also list or once 100 applicants have been reached, in which then the closing date could be a lot earlier. So if you see an announcement you're highly interested in, the sooner that you apply, the better. You can always revisit and re-edit your application as long as the announcement is still open. The announcement is going to have a brief position summary and include major duties of the position. It'll explain how do you qualify? So like, what are the basic minimum qualification requirements and specialized experience and or education? Sometimes you can use education as a substitution as well. The announcement will have a required document section, which is why I said that document section of your profile is super important. So the job announcement is going to list any documents that are required to be submitted with your application for it to be complete. And also note that you could possibly lose consideration if your application is not complete with those documents. Next slide. Step 2 is preparing your resume. You can create a resume in 2 different ways. You can either upload a resume that you already have, your professional resume, or by building a resume using the USAjobs Resume Builder tool. Either method is fine as long as all of the critical information here in this slide is shown in your resume. And some applicants even use both options. Keep in mind that you have 2 different audiences reading your resume. So first, when you submit your application, you have HR or human resources that's reviewing your resume for qualification determinations before the hiring manager will ever see your resume. And then once a hiring manager sees your resume, they're going to have a different lens. They're going to review for your experience and education in a little different manner. So maybe different than applying for a job in the private sector. I also encourage both ways. Professional resume kind of shows your character in a layout of your choice. And then the USAjob Resume Builder tool is going to make sure that you have all that critical information for qualifications to be determined. So on this slide here, fields that you must include in your resume: contact information, full name, address, telephone number, and a current valid email address. Work experience for each position that you previously held, include the position title, the company, organization, or agency, location of the position, supervisor contact information, number of hours that you worked per week. And that's important so you can make sure that you're receiving credit for either a full-time or a part-time position. Enter your salary. If it was federal, you'll want to also include the series and grade level, start and end date. So here, this is very important as well. So at the minimum, if you don't know the exact day of the month, you definitely want to list the month and the year in order to get full credit for that time frame. For example, if you list 2021 to 2022, you might only get 1 day of credit. That could be December 31st of 2021 to January 1st of 2022, right? But if you list January 2021 through January 2022, now you're getting a full year of credit because we're able to identify those months. Also include a description of work performed, level of experience, and highlight any special accomplishments or awards or recognition that you received while employed. Education, list the degree type, major, the date the degree was conferred or expected date, total number of semester, quarter hours completed, and the grade point average that you received. Volunteer experience may also be credited, so be sure to include that in your resume if it's applicable and relative to the position. And then you also want to list any academic awards, achievements, memberships with professional affiliations. Basically, depending on the position that you're applying to, read through the job announcement, tailor your resume, and highlight on the duties and accomplishments that align with the position, rather than using the same resume for multiple applications. And that's where that comes into handy with being able to upload 5 different resumes. Next slide. Okay, so step 3 is to collect required documents for the application. So that could be the federal resume that we just discussed, either the one that you created or the USAjobs resume builder one, or both. Academic transcripts, they're required for review if you're using education as part of the basic requirement or education substitution, and you'll know that based on the job announcement. Your transcripts can be unofficial at the time that you submit your application, but just know that if you're selected, before we can move on with onboarding, you will have to submit your official transcripts to the human resource specialist. Veterans preference documents, so that includes DD 2418, member 4 copy, showing character of discharge if you're a veteran, or if you're applying with military spouse for qualifying disability, then you would also need to submit those VA letters and any documentation that we discussed for military spouse eligibility. If you have previous government experience or current government experience, you would need to upload your SF-50, which is a notification of personnel action, and that's going to provide us information regarding your grade, series, and tenure and appointment type. And if you're applying as an individual with disability under Schedule A, you would upload Schedule A letter, make sure it's on the correct letterhead. And for future job applications, you can save all of those documents within your profile. I think it was up to 10 additional documents can be saved for all of those, just for ease of access when you're applying to positions, and then you can drag them from your profile into the application. And you can always edit them if your status changes, if you get a new position, or your degree has then been conferred, you can always update. Okay, next slide. Okay, so when your application is ready, you'll be directed from the USAjobs site to the hiring agency system to actually submit and finalize your application. Before you submit, you may need to complete other agency required steps, such as a vacancy specific questionnaire. And if that is a requirement, you'll be able to preview those questions in advance in the actual job announcement. It's just a little link that says preview here. So that's, again, it's buried within the job announcement. You have to scroll through, but you can preview those questions. If you click on preview here, it will expand a new window with all of the application vacancy specific questions. The time it takes to submit your application, again, it's going to depend on the job that you're applying to, the required documents, and the hiring agency's requirements. Next slide. Okay, so you've applied to a position. What's next, right? You'll have the ability to manage and track your application within USAjobs. You'll also receive email communication after each of these 4 touch points during the application process. So that first touch point is going to be after your application's been received by the agency. And that's not going to occur until after the closing date, not prior to the closing date. The second is after review of qualifications. So once HR has determined your qualifications, you'll be notified if you've been found qualified or not qualified based on your application. Third, you'll be notified during the referral process whether or not you've been referred to the hiring official or not referred. And then lastly, once a hiring official makes that decision, you'll then be notified again that you were either selected or not selected. You can refer to your profile at USAjobs at any time to check these status updates on all the positions you applied for. And you can also contact the human resource specialist that's listed in the job announcement. There's always going to be at least email and phone number listed to contact them, and just kind of, check on your status, have the announcement number ready so that they can best assist you. Okay, next slide.
When as we move on to the next one, can you give us an example, or what would that call or that email to the specialist to inquire about the status of your application should be? Because just being able to have those proper etiquette outreach emails, so that we don't sound like we are just making someone completely responsible for our success. What would that look like? Can you give us an example? What would that be?
Yeah. So at minimum, if you're emailing or calling, like I said, definitely have that announcement number handy, and you're going to find that within the job opportunity announcement. It's going to have an announcement number or a control number, and also let them know which grade level or levels that you applied to. And if there's multiple locations, also let them know which location. So a hiring or HR specialist could be servicing multiple job announcements. So it just makes the process a lot easier for them to look up the actual announcement that you applied to. But yeah, you can just say, "Dear Michelle, I recently applied to the position of, that closed on such and such date. I'm just checking in on the status of the interview process," or maybe you had an interview and you're just kind of waiting to follow up. I would say on average, from the time of the closing date to time of hire and onboarding, it could be a 60, 80-day process. So you're always more than welcome to contact the HR specialist. They'll be happy to kind of just fill you in on where you're at in that process if you're not sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, and speaking of interview, so what are the next steps and how do you prepare for the interview? Definitely be familiar with the position, review those duties and qualifications again as stated in the job announcement. Read through them and just kind of think back on your past experience, your education, and how you can pull in your experience and relate it to the actual job duties in the announcement. Research the agency, decide why are you interested in working for that agency, or why are you interested in working for that particular position. Prepare for your interview questions in advance. Most likely a federal structured interview is going to be like job related scenario or behavioral type questions. So maybe in advance you can prepare responses to speak from past experiences, specific situation. I like to use a STAR approach. So situations like, what was that situation? What tasks did you take, or actions that you took? And then what were the results or outcomes? So it kind of tells a story. Be very open-minded, optimistic, and most importantly, be patient with the hiring process. And I think the next slide, these are some resources that can help you with your federal application journey, specifically for Department of Labor. So this slide has some resources for DOL and military spouses. Just remember, all applicants, you must apply directly to the official federal website, usajobs.gov. So you're not going to just forward your resume or your application to the HR specialist. You do need to apply through the system. And that's why it's so important to get your profile and account set up correctly. If you experience any problems with setting up your USA Jobs profile, there's a help center. So you can message them, let them know if there's any technical difficulties, or once you're directed to the agency site, same thing. There's going to be a contact center to be able to reach out to. And then on this slide at the couple bottom two slides, so DOL resources for military spouse, that's on the dol.gov website. And it's going to have some information about training, support resources as you plan and prepare for your job search, license recognitions that are going to vary from state to state as you move around. So yeah, jot down some of those websites. Just go to dol.gov and all of those sites will be found there as well. Next slide. Here is my direct contact information. Feel free to reach out to me at any time with questions that you may have. I'm happy to assist you. I know that the application process, you might have a lot of questions, especially if it's your first attempt at it. Happy to answer any questions here as well. But if for some reason we don't get to it or we don't connect, you can always send me an email later on. Look me up on LinkedIn. I'll do my best to answer the questions here, but I'm happy to connect again later on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the presentation. I wish everyone all the best in their federal application journey and once hired, your federal career. But yeah, Laura, that's all that I have for the brief overview of federal application.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. And by the way, everyone, we are going to have all those links, every single one of those links on the PowerPoint presentation added to our Spouse First community. So, and then tomorrow we're going to do a mini career-a-thon on all federal employment, all the mini agencies, all the different rules that are currently opened. And of course, refer back to this webinar for best practices. But I think the best practice, Michelle, and if we can agree, is just simply logging into the USA Job portal and start by creating your profile from the beginning all the way to the end. Start filling it up and start working slowly to create a great profile where that it will store all of your basic data and your employment history. Then you can later on utilize for future applications, right?
Yes, yes.
And we have a lot of questions, by the way. A lot of people are posting questions, so we're definitely going to be reaching out to all of you guys. So, but if you have not, because I love to be able to first do shout outs. So if you have not yet posted where you're watching, please tell us where you're watching. We want to make sure that we impress Michelle with our reach, make sure that she knows that you are all over in Tampa are getting some virtual vibes for federal employment, and we're going to be able to secure it and look for some great opportunities, as well as I know that's in previous times we have reached all the way to Hawaii. So wherever you're watching, please let us know, and then continue to post your questions. And all of the resources will be definitely available at our Spouse First virtual community groups, and continue to follow. If you're not a member yet, you can always definitely click and sign up officially so that you can get the email updates as well, because the replay will be there. But directly back to Michelle. Questions before I address this one. I want to focus on, you mentioned volunteer experience. And as you know, military spouses, 70% for the most part, of our military spouse community, has volunteered or has done most of their, a good chunk of their career, their professional experience through volunteerism. What are some of those, I guess you can say, big volunteer experiences that we can really translate into the federal application that we really need to take into consideration? Because one of the things that we sometimes don't consider, we are not good braggers in taking credit for the stuff that we do.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly right there. I mean, really take ownership of your contributions to the volunteer work that you did. You know, did you lead a project? And if so, what was that project? What was your contributions to the project? How many people were in a team, if you led a team during volunteer work, or you know, anything that's like a measurable result is always helpful. So showing, you know, what actions you took. Did you run into any challenges? Those are going to prepare you for good interview responses. If you ran into any challenges, what steps did you take, and what were the results? Whether it was a positive result or negative result, it just shows your ability, you know, to work through different situations, problem solve, critical thinking. But take ownership of any experience that you have, and really brag about yourself. You have to on your resume, because you want to showcase that you are capable. And if anything relates directly to that job position, tie in some of those keywords.
Absolutely. And also, you know, there's tons of different agencies where you can find a home, right? You can find permanent positions with incredible benefits, and not have to play catch up on retirement or any of those things, because you can have longevity on that. And of course, that's another webinar, and how to, you know, probably switch from back and forth from different agencies and whatnot. But for the sake of this specific webinar, we just really want to encourage you to just get into USA Jobs and just build your profile, give it a try, drive it. You know, you don't know until you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you gotta just test it out. And I want to say it real quick, hello to Felicia all the way in Jacksonville, and then of course, Noni all the way in Maine. Thank you for watching, all the way in Virginia. Let's see who dominates the virtual waves this morning, Michelle, because sometimes we have a lot of people from certain communities, and they tend to do it. And it looks like that's the keys right now. Look, Hawaii, great. We love our community over in Hawaii. It feels like they're really, really far away, but we love it. So thank you. Florida, of course, more Virginia. Thank you. And then somebody posted, what do you have? Well, we have a lot of jobs for you, Franklin. So please go to usajobs.com and explore. And we're also going to share the link, of course, right in the comments. And then, of course, hello all the way to Kentucky. And somebody also, for you, Michelle, made a comment. Thank you for your service. And for, of course, from all of us here at Bluestar Families as well, thank you for your service. And of course, all the rest of it. So that everyone posted 1, 2, 3 are all part of the comments. But I do have a question here. You can help someone else with the site, but never looked for myself. So it looks like Susan has been doing advocating for other people, and she's been helping other ones. But Susan, it's time for you to go and build your own profile. And that's the best way sometimes that you can engage in employment. Okay, so here's the $1 million questions for fair employment. And I know that recently we actually helped promote one of those federal opportunities that was actually remote, right? It accommodated, and I think you guys hired 15. It was open to 15 positions, and hopefully you got some military spouses, or they're going through the process. But how does remote work when it comes to federal employment? What is the DOL or other agencies doing to accommodate some of those initiatives?
Yeah, so interestingly, within the last couple of years, I'm seeing more and more remote positions and telework type positions. My role, I currently am like on a hybrid, a couple of days a week I'll go in, other days I'm telework. But the job announcement is going to have a section at the top in the specifications of clarification from the agency. It will let you know if that position specifically is telework eligible or not. If it is the duty location is in one location, or if there's multiple locations you can apply to as your main primary duty station. And then also if it is remote or not. So again, the job announcement is going to list that information. But yeah, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they just recently posted in a program analyst position. They had 15 positions. Some of those were 100% remote. Really advocating to get military spouses on board. And thank you to Bluestar Families. They did a lot of great promotion for those for those positions. And we actually had referred more military spouses through that certificate to the hiring manager than we have in a long time. So thank you, Laura, for partnering with us and sharing those. And here on out, for any positions that are going to be announced specifically to military spouses, we'll forward those so you can share them with your community. But also keep in mind that you're not only eligible to apply for those that are a hiring path for a military spouse. You're also able to apply for those that are generally open to all U.S. citizens, open to the public. So don't limit yourself in that hiring path. Make sure that you're also clicking on open to the public, because you're also able to apply to those. The military spouse is just another avenue for those that may not be open to the public, but internal to candidate in federal positions only.
Absolutely. Don't limit yourself. Go there. The first thing, of course, you have to do for yourself is go and create your profile and start dressing it up. Start dressing it up, adding extra perks, all your great work history that you've done. And then from there, start, of course, navigating and perhaps setting up job alerts or the announcements for you to get notifications. If you're not ready, if you're not career ready, then it's really hard to sort of try to scramble in there and be one of the few applicants. And as we always tell you, the best practices that you can do to yourself to any job portal is to create a profile ahead of time and set out those notifications. And Michelle, I want to draw your attention here to this question from Karen. What if your spouse has less than 100% disability? Is there anything available?
Yeah, so I guess that some other factors could come into play. So if your spouse is 100% disabled, are they still an active service member? So that's one of the eligibility, is if you are the spouse of an active service member. So then that would be fine if they're 10%, 30%, whatever their disability rating is. If the spouse is retired or separated, then the disability rating must be 100% if that's how you're applying. But again, don't limit yourself to just military spouse avenues. You're definitely eligible to apply to those that are open to the public.
Absolutely. And then there's opportunities also, which I think a lot of our community members don't utilize or don't take advantage of recent graduates. Or if you're going to school, that's another way for you to get into federal government security position. If you are just recently graduated or you're about to graduate, you start looking and prepping your profile for that.
Yeah, so the recent graduate program is part of the Pathways program. And as long as you had graduated within the last 2 years, or if you are a veteran, then they extend that out. So because maybe you weren't able to finish your education requirements due to like your military service obligation or deployments. Again, read through the announcement, see who may apply as clarified by the agency. And even sometimes if you're still in school, so a lot of times announcements will say recent graduates graduating within the last 2 or graduated within the last 2 years, or spring 2023 candidates may apply. So again, read through that announcement. It's going to have everything you need to know. And if something is still not clear, contact that HR specialist.
Absolutely. And here's one more question. How does one express their level of experience on the resume?
Yeah,
and I think that's a really common question. If you recall on the poll that I made some comments, sent some comments to you, I think that this is where sometimes some of us who are not such great writers have the struggle to kind of, you get your writer's block, and how do you express and brag about your experience most?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe your resume sometimes needs edited again and again and again before it actually becomes this like, perfect package resume. So when you're applying through positions, if you are found not qualified, if you receive that push notification or status update that you did not meet the minimum qualifications, I would challenge you to reach out to the HR specialist, see if they can share any insight with you. Maybe, in your mind, it's a lot easier to know and understand what level of experience you held, what type of job you performed, and how you performed it. It's a lot harder to put that on paper and for someone else to read that. The good thing about a federal resume, it doesn't have to be short and sweet where an HR specialist is going to, scan through it in 6 seconds. It can be very thorough. It can be many pages. You want to expand and highlight on your duties that you perform for each job entry and elaborate your level of experience. So level of experience, what role did you hold? What were your responsibilities? Really be specific. If you had a position description or a position summary, use some of that information to help, but then also add on your specific achievements and qualifications.
Great. That is wonderful. Now, what happens, for instance, if you, and I'm posting this question, it's not showing here on our system, but I want to highlight and actually greet Kim, America, Terry, Citrine, and Ireli, all the way on our spouse virtual community. Sometimes it doesn't pop, their questions or their comments doesn't pop up here in our system. But I do want to ask, for instance, if you have applied and for some reason you were not considered, were not recommended, how often can you reapply? In the civilian world, you're told certain companies you can only apply within 6 months. You have to reapply X amount of, or you can only have 2 or 3 resumes. You mentioned 5 resumes. How often and how many other positions can you reapply at one time?
You can apply as often as you like. Sometimes positions are closed out and there's no selection made, so they'll be re-advertised. But you can apply to positions as often as you like, as many as you like at one time, and the grade levels as well. I don't know if I touched on that too much, but when an announcement is open, say for GS7 and GS9, so GS is the pay schedule that the federal government follows. You can find more information on that at opm.gov, which is the Office of Personnel Management. But say your requirements are going to be a little bit different to qualify for the GS7 versus the GS9. So if you are applying for the GS9, I would also encourage you to apply for the GS7 just to make sure your application is getting in at both grade levels. And then you will, if you were found qualified and selected, you will be selected at the highest grade level in which you were found qualified.
So if you apply for a position and it didn't, it closed, you perhaps not get selected. Let's say 3 months down the line, it reopens because something happened to the applicant or the selectees. You can still reapply for that same position.
Yes, you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. So definitely pays to have your profile be career ready, and just continue to do your homework and stay up to date with all the latest changes on those specific roles, right?
Yes, absolutely. And make sure all of those required documents are not just in your profile, but they also reattach at the end of the application, because again, that's what the HR specialist is using to determine your qualifications, is those documents. So if something's not uploaded, but you say you have, experience in somewhere, but it wasn't on your resume, or a degree, but there's no transcripts to verify if it's part of the basic requirements, then we will not be able to verify that. So that's why I said, if you're found not qualified, maybe it's a simple user error, like, forgetting to upload a document, or maybe the document didn't go through. Definitely contact the HR specialist just to do a little check-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a general mistake sometimes, or we overlook. It's not necessarily a mistake, we just simply overlook. We're so excited to apply. We're so excited to go through the application process and just complete all of the basics and I know I did it myself multiple times. I never uploaded. If I said I had a bachelor's, I never uploaded just, my certification or other things that were required for that specific position or announcement, and then you wonder why you don't get called or you don't get review further, because I myself sort of made a great job in declining myself, not qualifying myself for it because I did not follow all the details. So, okay, great. So Michelle, we're wrapping up, getting ready to close this webinar, and we still have quite a bit of people who are with us. So for all of those who are currently still watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the other communities, any tips, tricks, any words of wisdom that you can share with our community for military spouses, or just anyone of our neighbors that follow Blue Star families, that we can take into consideration and fight that stigma that federal employment is so hard with the application? Or what can you tell us?
Just give yourself grace. If you're rejected from, or not, I don't want to say that word rejected, but if you receive a notification that you weren't referred or you weren't found qualified, just take the time. Don't give up. Be optimistic about the process and reapply. I definitely did not get not nearly the first 50 federal jobs that I applied to. So it took quite a while. And again, it all depends on the type of position, how many applications that are in the system for that position. So it may not necessarily mean that you're not qualified for not being referred. It just might mean that there is a very, very large group of applicants applying. So to get yourself to stand out amongst those applications, just elaborate on your duties, your education, your skills, take that ownership, and just be optimistic with the process, for sure.
Absolutely. And that is the word of the day: optimism. Optimistic, right? Be optimistic on anything you go out and about for the rest of the day. Keep an optimistic front. And yes, and take your job search and the opportunities that are available to the max, because that's what all of us are here. And as Michelle mentioned, you can reach out to her on LinkedIn. Definitely reach out to her via email. And Michelle, we're going to take you we're going to blast you with great virtual vibes and emails, just so you know, once we share your information in our virtual community. So I hope that you're ready. And for those of you who will reach out to Michelle, please be mindful of the flow of emails she's going to get, so that you are just mindful of the replies or the communication back to you. It doesn't mean it's being ignored. It just means that there's a lot of super military spouse power that will definitely be reaching out to Michelle to make sure that we take advantage of all these great opportunities in federal employment, but most importantly, that Michelle is able to guide us and support us in future endeavors. So thank you so much, Michelle, for your time, for allowing us to ask you questions, but most importantly, to guiding us on how the federal process could be a little bit less intimidating for military spouses. And we definitely look forward to any announcements that will benefit our community. And particularly if these are remote, it's even better.
Yes. Thank you, Laura, so much for having me. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And most importantly, thank you for everything that you do for your families.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your service. And please, those of you who are still on, please continue to watch and watch the replay. Tag your MilSpouse network. Let them know about these great opportunities in federal employment, and that can change a great deal of of a career trajectory for someone. So just by sharing and talking about it and making things a little more achievable, it's just all it takes. So thank you, Susan, because Susan is one of those advocates who is helping others create profiles and advocate for applications. So thank you for all that you do. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you at the next careers webinar. Thank you.